Must have been a heck of a talk. Oh my goodness. I can't tell if that's upside or down. Oh good, it is. So this thing called You. It's a book that was written by Dr. Ernest Holmes, who synthesized this philosophy. He would tell you he didn't discover anything. He just took the best of the information he could get from all the religions and philosophies he could get his hands on, and he boiled them all down until he got the principles behind each and every one of them. So he wrote our textbook, and when the second textbook came out, it was a revised version. His practitioner, the person that he prayed with, looked at him and said, "What?" And that's something you will see on the faces of many people taking foundations. If you looked at my book, you will see, this is what this means. No, scratch that out. They said no, it was the first one. So what he did was went back and wrote a book called This Thing Called You. And there's a companion book called This Thing Called Life. And what he says is that we as human beings just want to understand how to live happy. We just want to understand how to live according to natural law so that we can be the most efficient and effective beings that we possibly can be. It sounds a lot better than flailing about and having to do the experiment 1,000 times before we finally figure out the one thing that will work for us. So that's what we do here. We figure out how to live on this planet with other people. That's step 2. But first of all, how to live on this planet with ourselves in a relationship with the divine that is respectful and cooperative. You might have noticed that there was a harmony on that song. If Krista and Tom were not willing to cooperate, there would have been no harmony. There would have been noise. But have you ever listened to somebody trying to sing the harmony and they're just not in line with the melody? Yeah, it sounds disharmonious, to put it politely. It hurts. So when you have two individual notes holding their own, being true to who they really are, but they come together and create something more, that is divine harmony. That is what we seek within ourselves. We as human beings, the individualized expressions of the divine, working together with the divine as we experience it, that is the cooperative behavior that makes life work. I see it over and over and over again. I usually get to watch when somebody clicks over to, I'm struggling. I hit the right note, and now I'm in divine harmony, and wow, life just got really easy. The more we practice being in that divine harmony, what happens is there's usually stimulus and then reaction, kind of like when you throw the Mentos into the soda. And there's this boom, hopefully, especially if you're working with third graders. You hope for that boom. If it fizzles, they're just not impressed. So you want that experience of the immediate reaction. In life, it works a little better if you don't just react immediately without thinking to everything that happens. Have you known one of those people? Has anyone else ever been one of those people? That was back in my drama queen days. I have abdicated that particular throne. It's what happens when you practice this, is that you take stimulus and you move it over here, and then you take reaction and turn it into response by creating space in between. When you feel rushed and pressured, that's when I make mistakes. But if we can create that space, there's time for the divine flow and for inspiration and for the power of the divine mind within each and every one of us to take over and say, have you thought about this? What if? And when you have cooperation going on, what we find over and over and over again is a better answer, a more creative answer comes up. So yesterday we did I'm trying really hard to say we didn't support Alzheimer's, because we don't. We vote against that. We support an end to Alzheimer's. And one of the cool things that happened, I loved how this philosophy, it has so many different names and gets used by so many different people. We happen to have one name for it, but everybody uses it, whether they know they're doing it or not. So we got given little flowers that were really not windmills. What do you call it when you spin them around? Pinwheels, yes, pinwheels. Thank you. You get a point. So we all had these little pinwheels that were flowers, and for one color, you were just there to be of support. For another color, it meant you were dealing with Alzheimer's within your own body. Another one was for people who were caretaking, were supporting somebody with Alzheimer's. Another color was for those who had lost someone to Alzheimer's. Now, me being me, I just put CSLP.org and our values on all the petals so that everybody would see them, because walking billboard. What they did before the walk, though, I thought was incredibly, exquisitely brilliant. They had one little girl get up there who Seamus Smith told me was a friend of his, because he knows everyone. Been on the planet a decade. By the end of the next one, he'll have taken over. And we'll be perfectly happy about it, by the way, because he likes dancing and having fun. So he said that was a friend of his, and she walked out with a white flower. And it represented the first person to be cured from Alzheimer's. And so what they did was they had all these people working together to pull her as the first cured person into being. That's why we pray as a group. That's why you ask a practitioner to help you when you're having trouble getting to that mental acceptance of your good. That's why you pull in a practitioner and say, I am nuts. I have gone completely cray-cray, and I need some help coming back into my right mind. And so the practitioner comes with you to hold your hand and reflect a higher truth back to you until you can see it in yourself. I thought it was brilliant that they gave everybody what we call a spiritual prototype or a mental equivalent. That little girl standing there with that white pinwheel gave everybody an image of what it will look like when this particular dis-ease no longer matters, because we can cure it like that. Gets to the point nobody even bothers to get it anymore. So that is what happens. That's the power of coming together within the one mind and agreeing to something. That's why last week, at the end of service, we waited and did our benediction and our peace song after you knew what it was that we're all coming together to know, which is that this land swap deal that we're doing with Dr. Ascari is absolutely controlled within divine hands and divine minds. And the physical swap that happens has already been determined by the divine so that everybody wins. So that God, in all of its incarnations, gets to have a cooperative experience within itself of how to become more prospered. And by prospered, I mean bringing more life, bringing more vibrancy into this town, bringing more healing and wholeness into this town, bringing more abundance of every kind into this town, because we choose to work together and cooperate, us as humans and then us as all divine beings, knowing what to do and how to do it and how to make it work. Now, in my mind, that's already been decided by the divine. I can't wait to see what it looks like. So that's what we're agreeing on, yes? And that's why we waited to say our affirmation, our benediction afterwards. Something wonderful is happening right here, right now. And as we agree on that, as we cooperate in that, it becomes a stronger and stronger thought which becomes a greater reality. None of that was in the talk I wrote. Okay. You guys are used to that from me, right? So we ended up raising over $100,000 so far. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how I would raise $100,000 by myself. I am willing to find out. Boss, just saying. And that is the power of all of us coming together. There's a lot going on in this world right now. There's a lot we're learning. And in America here, we have a political and economic system called, ye gods, not sociology, no, the other one with the money, capitalism. Oh, she has. We have capitalism. Now, here's the thing. Capitalism works best when people cooperate with each other. Capitalism works best when that one tide of prosperity raises all boats. There are those who would tell you we've gotten a little out of whack. Some people think that because they're on the end of the ship that's going up, they're not on the sinking ship. They think that's great. Think back to Titanic, guys. He could have fit on that door. They think because they're high off the hog, they're high out of the water, that their life is going well. But they're sinking just as fast as the people who are now underwater. And so what we want, what I would suggest would be in our best interest, is for them to do better. For that 1% to do even better by learning that true prosperity requires us to bring that ship back into balance. I want better for them. I don't want for them to feel separate and distant. Have you ever felt like you were on the outside and nobody liked you? Just watch the news. These people have got to be feeling really bad about themselves right now. I'm sure they're crying into their satin pillows. But truly, they would be doing better, financially as well as in every other way, if everybody was doing better. Capitalism works best the way Henry Ford did it. When Henry Ford created his factory, which is a whole new idea, everybody had to work together to create one car. And what he knew was he needed to pay his workers well enough that they could buy the end product. He was creating his own customers. Now, there's a lot of stuff he did that was hinky, and we're not going to pretend he didn't, but that was brilliant. And so when we all do better, yes? Yeah. There's a thing that happens in corporate retreats all over the place now. And these are the instructions. You get 20 sticks of spaghetti, 1 yard of tape and 1 yard of string, and 1 marshmallow. Your instructions are to build the tallest freestanding tower in teams of 4. Marshmallows must be attached to the top of the structure. You have 18 minutes, go. And so you have all of these well-educated MBAs looking at each other like, I didn't take the spaghetti class at Harvard. Over and over and over, what they find is you have CEOs that do okay, and you have kindergartners that just kill it. Kindergartners do better. Why? Because they're not afraid of making mistakes in front of each other. And I would suggest to you that they do better because they are not competing. They are still in everybody holds hands to cross the street. Share your toys. Be nice to each other. They are being taught to cooperate. In the business world, we are taught to compete. Cooperation wins. Competition does okay for a while, but after a while, it ceases to serve us. And so that sense of cooperation is natural law. That's the natural law we wanted to learn about so that we could live as more healthy, happy, and effective human beings. This thing called you was built to cooperate with the other godlings all around you. How beautiful is that? That is step one. We have to recognize, learn to see God in each other. What we do after that is act like we believe there's God in each other. Anyone else read the book, yep, I got it, I totally get it, and then you get into your car and you act like you're the only God in the room? Hopefully your car is not in a room, but you know what I mean. We talked last week about how trees cooperate. There's the mother tree, and it looks out for its particular seedlings. There's a shaman by the name of Sandra Ingerman who says, all spiritual practices teach about the power of intention, which inevitably leads to action. So that knowing that cooperation is better for us requires us to do the hard work of learning what our culture has taught us, which is that we need to compete. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. Poor puppies. I've played with puppies. None of them tried to eat each other. They might chew on each other a little bit, but they're just playing. So what we are challenged to do, what we as adults must do, is unlearn all of that wonderful education we paid so much for. Or that some of us still pay for every month. So that line in the song about if you're going to work with the younger generation, you have to give them hope. You must be willing to give them hope. They have a benefit, a talent that we have been trained out of. They don't know that they cannot change the world. They don't know yet that they're supposed to be competing as opposed to cooperating. Isaac Newton famously said, if I have seen farther than others, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. We have had our time and continue to have our time seeing further than others. As adults, part of our role is to be the giants that the next generation gets to stand on. We do our work, and we lift them up as high as we possibly can. That is spiritual growth. We grow as big and as wide and as tall as we possibly can, so that the next generation, when they climb up on our shoulders, can see that much farther. That is the gift we give. That is our privilege, to do our own spiritual work to lift up the next generation. Now, the next generation may or may not realize that that's what we're doing. I don't know about you, but when I was a teenager, my parents were really stupid. I knew everything, and I knew how messed up my parents were. Of course, then I met my grandparents, and I was like, oh, I understand. Bless their hearts. So this week, I have been listening to somebody by the name of Greta Thunberg. I know I'm not pronouncing her name correctly because I don't speak her language, but Greta Thunberg was born in 2003. What were you doing in 2003? I think I might have been married. Wow, that was a long time ago. A whole nother wife. At age 8, she started understanding a little bit about climate change. And in the years that followed, she went into a depression because she understood what climate change was doing. She got it. She went into a depression, she became obsessive compulsive, and she ceased to speak. She had something called elective mutism. Now she says she only speaks when it's important, and there's only one thing she's known for speaking about, guys. If you watch how she is in front of the United Nations, that girl has no fear. If I was in another place and another time, I'd say she was all out of to give. Empty pockets. There they go. What she says is the adults are not acting like this is a crisis. I think she even goes so far as to say, you're old, you'll die soon, you don't care. I never said that in front of the adults. I kind of figured they didn't want to hear it from little old me. What did I know? She has the superpower of a slight case of Asperger's and being on the autistic spectrum. So she hasn't been taught to be sweet and nice and polite and a good little girl who sits down and shuts up. She's going to save us all by being rude. More power to her. Yes, everything in me when I hear her goes, oh, she's not waiting around for us to get it. You know, we used to be two separate organizations. There was Religious Science International and the United Church of Religious Science, teaching oneness. Our teenagers looked at us like we were nuts. And they said, heck with you all, you're not going to get it done. They started having their teen camps together years before we would acknowledge that maybe, given that we were teaching oneness, the exact same book and the same curriculum, the same flippin' classes about oneness, separate. They didn't wait for us. Eventually, to quote some of our leaderships, there were just enough funerals, and the right ones, that they were able to come together and start what we call integration. Yes, that's what it takes. Sometimes. You need to let the old fall away. How well do we do that? So, we changed our names to United Centers for Spiritual Living and International Centers for Spiritual Living. And you know what the kids did? They said at that summer camp, okay, you sizzle, I sizzle, we sizzle. And so they spelt it O-U-I, we sizzle. Yes, sizzle. They're always a couple steps ahead of us. And I'm fine with that. I'm like, go. You go, kids. I will push from the rear. But I'll be back here after you break the ground. She talks about what she can do, the behavior. Greta talks about what behavior is important to her. One of the things she does is refuse to get on an airplane because of the carbon tax, not tax, but the cost that costs the planet. And she got her parents to buy in. It's amazing the things people will do for their kids, right? Well, her mother was a famous opera singer and had to give up her career to stop using airplanes. When Greta came over to speak to the United Nations in New York, she took a boat. And she sailed her own boat from Washington to the United Nations in New York. She's not kidding, folks. She expects behavior change from us. She doesn't eat meat. She chooses to live in a way that will actually heal the planet as opposed to continue harming the planet. She doesn't call it climate change, she calls it the climate crisis. She says she doesn't want us, well, she doesn't really care what the adults do anymore. What she and the rest of the kids in the world are doing is acting like your home is on fire, because it is. If your house was on fire right now, would you wait until you'd had a cookie to go home and fix that? I just made myself very nervous because I don't know what my cats are doing right now. Ernest Holmes writes in The Science of Mind, man's mind should swing from inspiration to action, from contemplation to accomplishment, from prayer to performance. Let us feel that our purposes are animated and inspired from on high, and then let us go forth and make our dream come true in human existence. Ernest Holmes said the same thing we say, treat and move your feet. Does anybody remember the movie The Secret? For a while there, everybody was coming in to watch The Secret with us, which was wonderful and good, and it was like step one. It was the teaser. And then they found out they couldn't sit in their mother's basement at age 45 and go, "Om, I'm rich. Om, I have a Maserati." That there was actual work involved, and many of them disappeared. They did. I watched it. I was helping found a church at the time, and I was like, yeah, they watched The Secret. Never see them again. We just ticked them off entirely by telling them what they had to give up and what they had to add to their lives. What do you mean I can't just say Om and put the picture on top of a treasure map or a vision board, as we like to call them? Well, yeah, you need to do that. It's the fun part. But, there's work to be done, too. It's not as easy as it sounds, guys. To come into balance with the divine within you might be some of the hardest work you ever do. It is also, and I promise you this, it is also the most rewarding thing you can do, because it builds on itself and it starts speeding up and it becomes an avalanche. It becomes a tsunami that you can surf. It becomes a huge power that you are in balance with and moving with and dancing with, that moves this country, moves this planet in ways that at the moment we can't even imagine. It requires us to stop thinking we are separate. It requires us to stop competing and move into cooperation with one another and anybody who will work with us, whether you like them personally or not. Whether you agree, you don't get to find out who they voted for or what particular sect of your religion they are before you start working together. We have a common aim. Whatever your common aim is, we get to find the people who will work with us on it and then learn how to work together, how to cooperate. And it all starts with going within and finding the divine aspect of you, that part of you you've been trying to ignore within yourself, and learning how to dance with that, learning how to work with that energy. When we do that, we call it prayer. And that is what I'll begin with now. And in this moment, I'm feeling the blessing of cooperation, the blessing of coming into oneness together. So this is what we call spiritual mind treatment. Go ahead and close your eyes if you want, if you're comfortable with that. And trust that in this moment, you are perfectly safe just sitting there in the quiet that is underneath my words, in the soul conversation that we're having here today that is going on at a deeper level than the words being said. And in this moment, I give thanks as I speak on behalf of all of us and allow Spirit to speak me, that God is all there is. I believe in God and absolutely, positively nothing else. That one power and one presence is the only power that is this universe. It goes by many, many different names, including each one of our individual names. We are one in that. We are part of that great beingness that is the multiverse, that is this very room. The energy of life fills us up and gives us life and form, just as it does every other being on the planet, human or otherwise. Vegetables and minerals as well. And in this moment, that oneness, that cooperation amongst that oneness is the healing we've been looking for. It is the answer to individual dis-ease. It is the divine response to some people having too much and others not enough of anything. And so I celebrate and bless the divine within each and every being on this planet. I praise and raise each and every one of them, knowing that their good is my good and my good is their good. And so we come together in the name of love to claim that good, to claim that oneness that leads to all the other forms of good. I give thanks for this truth. I give thanks that it is already done, that this is just how Spirit works. And so I accept that good for all of us and allow it all to be. And together we say, and so it is.